Esteemed scholars, neophytes of history, seekers of the past's great and terrible deeds, today I recount the saga of the devastation of Baal, a tale etched in blood and seared into the Imperium's storied history. In the days when the galaxy was cloven by the cicatrix maledictum and the darkness grew deeper than the void itself, Baal, the heart of the Blood Angel's dominion, faced annihilation. It was not by the hands of traitors or the deceit of heretics, but by the great devourer, the Tyrannids, whose hunger is as endless as the void from which they spawned. Hive Fleet Leviathan, a monstrous tide of death and oblivion, had emerged from the cosmic depths, an abomination of nature's laws, setting its myriad eyes upon Baal. It sought not conquest, but consumption, to strip bare the very essence of life from those hallowed worlds. The skies darkened, not with storm clouds, but with the bio-vessels of the Tyrannid swarm. A cascade of organic horror rained down upon the red sands, each impact a herald of the slaughter to come. The sons of Sanguiniess, noble and valiant, prepared to embrace their destiny, a mirror to their Primarch's own sacrifice millennia ago. Commander Dante, the venerable chapter master of the Blood Angels, beheld the approaching cataclysm with the poise of one who has known war for centuries. Desperate measures were taken. Gene Seed, the future of the chapter, was spirited away, while the youth of Baal were armed, a measure of desperation and hope entwined. Wave after wave, the Tyrannids came, not merely to fight, but to overwhelm, to consume, to eradicate. The defenders of Baal met them with bolter and blade, with the fury of their Primarch's blood singing in their veins. Every fallen Tyrannid was a testament to the defenders' valor, but every fallen Astartes, a dirge for the future. And there, upon the precipice of hope's demise, they stood, Blood Angels and their successors, side by side, a brotherhood unbroken by fear or the shadow of death that loomed over them. From the flesh terrors to the sanguinary guard, each warrior was an echo of Sanguinius' eternal defiance. This, dear compatriots, was no mere battle. It was an ode to the courage that beats within the heart of every servant of the Imperium. As the darkness closed in, their light burned all the brighter, a defiance of the very darkness that sought to extinguish it. Let me tell you this tale of Dante's final stand. In the somber Exis Chapel, Commander Dante offered his final homage to Sanguinius, marking an era's poignant closure. Over the course of 6 relentless days since the Cicatrix Maledictum's cataclysmic opening, the angelic host had waged a brutal campaign against the Tyrannids. During a brief respite, the hive mind's influence seemed to wane, rendering the disarrayed aliens vulnerable to the wrath of the Space Marines. Carefully orchestrated sorties effectively pushed the invaders away from the redoubt's gates, affording Sanguinius' heirs precious time to regroup within their fortress. Despite their resolute stand, the Blood Angels only retained control of the redoubt, while the rest of the arcs had fallen under enemy dominion. But now, their fleeting respite had concluded, and the hive mind stirred once more, heralding a renewed threat. Ordamael gently rested his hand upon Dante's battered armor, every plate bearing the grim testament of countless battles. Its once golden luster had been eroded to bare ceramite, visible only in a few places beneath scabs of sealant foam and dried alien blood. Ordamael, Dante addressed, his tone resolute. They are ready? They await your command, my lord, replied Ordamael. The preparations are made. The Amarian guards stand ready to open the gates to the tower. I am bound to remind you that once this order is given, it cannot be undone. The blood-cursed will not stop until they are dead. They cannot be contained once released. I will have it done, affirmed Dante. Then it is time, my lord, said Ordamael. Dante rose slowly, maintaining his bowed reverence to the modest statue of Sanguinius within the chapel's reliquary niche. This white alabaster statue had been brought to Baal centuries ago, now bathed in an ominous crimson hue, as the chapel's windows admitted light resembling arterial blood. The Baalian sky's once subtle pink shades had been replaced by an unchanging bloody glow. The sun and the moons had vanished. Blood tainted the heavens, and Dante's heart seethed with fury. Now is indeed the time, Dante declared. He saluted the statue of his Gene Father and bowed as deeply as his armor allowed. The Exis Chapel, as chapter master, was his personal sanctuary for prayer and contemplation, one he did not expect to revisit. Descending the stairs from the Exis Chapel to the Basilica Sanguinarum, Dante heard the resonant voices of Space Marines singing the More Patris, the death hymn of the blood. They knelt with heads bowed over their weapons, offering their lives one final time in the service of their Primarch and Emperor. Emerging from the screen door, Dante traversed the Basilica's central aisle. All the warriors had donned black garb, for there was no paint to be found. Instead, they had stained their armor with blood and soot, darkening the once vibrant hues of their chapter insignias in mourning for a bloodline soon to be extinguished. The cathedral itself bore scars of ruination, its ornate windows shattered, its roof partially collapsed, and the floor marred by acid marks from Xenos incursions swiftly repelled. The pervasive scent of burning pervaded the desolate sanctuary. Dante ascended to the pulpit, situated at the forefront of the basilica for the last time. Chaplains and sanguinary priests from various chapters stood in formation at the pulpit's edge, facing the modest gathering of warriors, far fewer in number than the blood angels alone had boasted before the advent of Leviathan. Corbulo and Ordemael were among the survivors, though many of their brethren had perished. Together they constituted a mere fraction of the once mighty Council of Blood and Bone. Dante joined his voice with the collective singing of the death hymn. The congregation appeared deceptively substantial, 2,000 strong, twice the size of a full chapter. Still, it represented only a fraction of the angelic host. Dante couldn't help but acknowledge the devastating blow dealt to the scions of Sanguiniess, a wound from which they would never fully recover, he believed. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he contemplated how his reign as chapter master would witness the unraveling of a Primarch's legacy. As the More Patris concluded its mournful strains, Dante cast aside his sorrow. The cathedral's cyber-construct roosts remained vacant, bereft of autochoristers to harmonize with the Space Marines' deep voices. Hearing the song performed in this manner, emanating from numerous transhuman throats, unembellished and pure, lifted Dante's spirit. There was an inherent purity in it. While the blended songs of cyborgs, Adeptus Astartes, and thralls might have symbolized the mingling of Sanguinius's blood with that of mortal men, it had now distilled back to its unadulterated essence. When the cathedral stones ceased to reverberate with the final notes, Dante's voice resonated through the chamber, robust and unwavering, devoid of doubt or despair. Those who listened felt a stirring in their very blood. There is always beauty, even in the depths of ugliness, even in the depths of defeat, Dante declared. Your song raises us all above this realm of earthly flesh, for we are angels and warriors in equal part. Our devotion to our Emperor and our Gene Father is a paragon to which the citizens of the Imperium have long aspired. Now we stand upon the brink of death. This will not change. I say, let us not go into the long silences of history, but stride forward into legend. If the Tyrannids remained without guidance, we might survive here, behind the walls of the heavenward redoubt. But they reorganize. The hive mind is disrupted no longer. Our librarians report the shadow falls once more. It is weak, but it grows stronger with every passing minute, coalescing around one potent nexus. If this is allowed to continue, the Tyrannids will become of one mind again, and they shall attack without mercy, and we will perish here, within these walls. We have no notice of the fleet. The void is awash with the energies of the warp. If we strike down their leader, we may deal the swarm one fatal death blow and save the worlds beyond Baal. His voice caught. He recovered quickly. In this way, we will win a victory of sorts. We will most likely die in the attempt. Millions of them remain, scant thousands of us. If we stay behind these walls, they will overwhelm the last of our defenses in a few days. This is the only way. The shadow in the warp is a many-headed monster, more ferocious than the Hydra of ancient tales, for it has 1,000,000,000 times 1,000,000,000 heads, and all must be severed before it will die. We have the blades, we have the will. Let us carve the skulls of this creature. Are we not the sons of the great angel? Are we not the most blessed of all, Adeptus Astartes? He allowed the unspoken query to linger in the air. Our Primarch was among the first to die, but he lives eternal in all our beings. The meat and blood of our bodies are his host. For 10,000 years we have protected his legacy within the fortresses of our bodies. He bowed his head. That time is at an end. We are all death company now. The sarcophagi lie shattered, their occupants devoured, and our future upon Baal has died with them. The chapter is finished here, but it is not yet dead. Our bloodline may survive in the gene seed of our brothers elsewhere in the galaxy. It may not. This question of survival is no longer ours to contemplate. Divert your gaze from the future and think of the present, of now, of what we might accomplish in these next glorious hours. For if we must go into the darkness of extinction, let us do so with our swords in our hands and the wrath of Sanguiniess in our grasp. When tidings of this battle reach other worlds, let them lift up their guns and say, "We shall not fall, we shall not die meekly. Through battle we remember and honor the sons of Baal." His voice resonated. Who will say I? Who will raise his sword with mine? Who will bring burnished steel and wrathful soul to the slaughter, and let red ruin flow? Who will die in remembering our Lord? Our flesh may be devoured, but they cannot touch our souls. We are the most blessed of the Emperor's warriors. The soul of our Lord lives in the minds and the hearts of every one of us. We the red-clad, the blood-hungry, we the wrathful and the pure, we the sons of Sanguiniess, most noble and glorious of all the Primarchs. We hold more than his memory in our hearts and minds. The great angel would not lurk here waiting for his end. He would strike out, seeking to destroy the leader of his enemies, as he did when he confronted his brother Horus. His voice hushed. This choice now lies before us, just as it did for our progenitor. Should we undertake this, we shall inevitably meet our demise, but Baal may yet endure, offering refuge to other space marines. We will not be among them, but the name of the Blood Angels and the numerous other chapters who fought alongside us shall echo throughout the galaxy. Dante paused and reached behind his head. Hisses filled the air as he unfastened the death mask of Sanguiniess, proudly revealing his aged countenance to his comrades. For a millennium I have worn this mask, so long that mortal humans on 1,000 worlds equate Dante with Sanguiniess. One has become the other. I have no need of a mask any longer. I need not wear our Lord's face. He is in here, in my hearts. He paused, and the gaze of 2,000 black-helmed warriors met his expectantly. What say you, warriors of Baal? He inquired, in an escalating and forceful whisper. That we let slip the red thirst one final time, and fly upon wings of wrath with our Lord unto battle. I commend you all, O ye mighty, to the protection of the great angel. For the Emperor, for Sanguiniess, there is no more beauty to be had from life, so let us then seek a beautiful death. A beautiful death? For the Emperor, for Sanguiniess, echoed the voices of the doomed angels, their cries resonating throughout the ruins of the Basilica Sanguinarum. Satisfied, Dante nodded. Then we march, all of us who bear the blood. Chaplain Ordamael, summon the Amarian Guard. Unseal the gates of the Tower of Amareo. Let the accursed march alongside the accursed. The Tower of Amareo had endured the relentless assault with its impervious, windowless walls unscathed. Even in the face of ceaseless attacks by the aliens, the battle servitors, dreadnoughts, space marines and blood thralls of the Amarian Guard had steadfastly maintained their posts, vigilantly watching over the frenzied creatures within. The crimson gates, forged from unyielding iron, seldom parted, and never to release anything beyond their confines. With a tremor, the 50-strong cohort of the Amarian Guard withdrew from the gatehouse, positioning themselves on the sheltered battlements overlooking the path leading to the tower. As the imposing gates slowly swung open, a resonant tolling began from the bell perched atop the tower's pinnacle. Red and ebony silk, untouched for countless years, unfurled and cascaded down from shuttered heights to the ground below. Leading the procession was the custodian of the damned, a space marine champion bound by a solemn oath to remain within the tower until the very end of days. Now that fateful moment had arrived, and he strode forth, his sword ablaze with crackling energy, his obsidian armor gleaming like polished oil. Following in his wake came the ominous sounds of chains rattling and rusty doors grating open, all driven by laborious machines, accompanied by unearthly howls and shrieks of a bestial nature. The thick animalistic voices uttered only one intelligible word, repeated relentlessly, "Blood, blood, blood." From the depths of the accursed Tower of Amareo emerged its damned inhabitants, grotesque aberrations, bearing little resemblance to their human origins due to the rampant corruption of their gene seed. These wretched beings stood twice the height of ordinary men, their grotesque forms bulging with unnatural muscles. Yellowed fangs replaced their once human teeth, and their skin took on a sickly blood-red hue with a waxy texture. Their eyes glowed with an eerie amber light as they bounded forward on knuckled fists, akin to primal apes, their howling voices filling the air. A sinister presence hung over them, a testament to the chapter's agony, now unleashed to wreak havoc. These abominations paid no heed to commands. The custodian of the damned wisely stepped aside, encasing himself within an armored cylinder to allow their unbridled passage. They surged forward, consumed by madness, ruthlessly tearing at their own flesh with long obsidian nails. A path had been meticulously cleared, leading from the tower's gate on the Arx Murus all the way to the depths of the redoubt and the Well of Angels. Guided by locked doors and formidable barricades, the damned charged onward, their deafening roars reverberating through the keep. Finally, they reached the Grand Inner Ward, an enclosed battlefield behind the imposing Blood Gate. As the damned approached, the portcullis, gates, and energy fields all yielded to their advance. Lifeless Tyrannid corpses tumbled down from the towering piles, heaped against the gates, adding to the festering mound of alien flesh that filled the Well of Angels. With an insatiable thirst for bloodshed, the abominations scrambled over the grim terrain, eager to find new victims. Once they had moved beyond, the inner gates at the rear of the ward opened, and the Space Marines swiftly followed suit. Within a matter of minutes, they were assembled and poised for their final assault, their ears filled with the cacophonous sounds of the ongoing Tyrannid battle. Commander Dante raised the Ax Mortalis high, his voice ringing out above the chaos. "Sons of Baal, forward!" he bellowed. "For Sanguiniess, for the Emperor, a beautiful death!" They roared in response, charging forward together through the heavenward redoubt's Bloodgate and into the occupied Well of Angels. The Blood Angels surged through the Well of Angels, ruthlessly clearing the path ahead, casting aside any lingering Tyrannids as they advanced towards the Elohim Gate. Within the mountain tunnel, they encountered no resistance. The tower's monstrous inhabitants had already swept through, leaving a trail of carnage in their wake. The tunnel's end beckoned ominously, its crimson glow reminiscent of a bullet wound. As they ran, Commander Dante's voice rang out, his words imbued with fervor and devotion. "From his blood are we born, from his essence are we made, from his passion comes our art, from his nobility comes beauty, from his might stems justice, from his thirst is born righteous rage." For the first time in 12 centuries, Dante relinquished his ironclad control, allowing the overpowering fury of Sanguiniess to surge forth, temporarily setting aside his humanity. His worst fear had come to fruition, yet he found pleasure in letting go. Dante willingly embraced the red thirst, feeling the torrent of blood coursing through his veins, bringing both pain and relief. No longer did he need to restrain himself. He reveled in his newfound freedom as his muscles swelled and his heart pounded relentlessly. His angelic teeth emerged from his gums. "Rage," he roared. "Rage, rage, rage against the dying of the light." Erupting from the Elohim Gate tunnel, they resembled the Emperor's wrath made manifest. The sluggish Tyrannids struggled to react, their lightning-quick responses yet to fully return. Nevertheless, a ripple among the swarming hordes outside hinted at a growing coordination. The Blood Angels and their successor chapters crashed into the Tyrannid masses that filled the landing fields, toppling the smaller creatures and crushing them underfoot. They followed a gruesome path paved by the damned, a weak point in the horde that the Space Marines swiftly exploited. Jump packs ignited, propelling the fortunate warriors over their comrades. Dante led the charge, his jetpack thundering. The remnants of the Sanguinary Guard flew at his side, led by Dontoriel and Sephiran, a glorious winged regiment not seen since Sanguiniess himself soared over the skies of Baal. Ordamael flew beside Dante, his chants to Sanguiniess becoming increasingly incoherent, lost in the midst of his thickening tongue. Their descent was a torrent of sorrow-fueled fury. Dante's boots pounded into the shattered skull of a Tyrannid warrior, reducing it to a flattened pulp. The creature's lash whip snaked up, ensnaring his feet, but Dante swiftly severed it with a single blow from his axe. He thudded onto the blood-soaked sand and instantly resumed his sprint. His movements resembled the relentless desert wind, never pausing, never wavering, despite the numerous wounds that still throbbed with residual pain. Through the wreckage of Space Marine aircraft and tanks, he cut a path of carnage, slaughtering every Tyrannid that crossed his path. Only one item on his helm display held his attention: the hive mind nexus pinpointed by his dwindling psychers. All other data had been purged, as comprehension eluded him in his furious state. From the Citadel Reclusiam, manned by the last mortal defenders within the arcs, cannons roared. While the more esoteric weapons baffled the mortals, they effectively operated the fortress's projectile casters. Cones of sand and mangled body parts shot skyward, propelled by madness, only succumbing to gravity hundreds of feet above. On Dante's helm plate, a slow, enticing marker beckoned him deeper into the throng of alien monstrosities. Ignoring the relentless explosions, he pressed forward. Few blood thralls remained. The untrained conscripts from Baal's moons fought alongside him. Miraculously, Dante avoided being disintegrated by friendly fire. Dante continued his relentless advance, with Ordamael raging at his side, his Crozius hammering in rhythmic fury. The once coherent songs of the Angels of Death had deteriorated into bestial howling. Squad cohesion and tactics vanished, replaced by a relentless tide of berserkers who fought and died individually. Armed with melee weapons or their bare hands, they grappled with the alien horrors. The world transformed into a chaotic mass of xenos, detonations, and a turbulent sky concealing the universe beyond. The Tyrannids, recovering from their initial shock, displayed growing synchronization in their attacks, feinting and withdrawing strategically. While they had not yet achieved the hive mind's peak efficiency, their actions demonstrated greater thought and coordination. They no longer approached the Space Marines thoughtlessly, but adapted to the situation. Phosphor biomunitions rained overhead, erupting in fiery explosions that consumed both Tyrannids and Space Marines alike. Artillery beasts unleashed a relentless barrage, their cannon symbiotes emitting heart-rending screams that intensified as the Space Marines penetrated deeper into the horde. Dante fought without restraint, his honor guard by his side, showcasing the perfected skills honed over centuries. Despite their relentless fury, the signs of impending defeat became increasingly evident. One by one, the sanguinary guard met their demise, plucked from the skies by shrikes, torn asunder by carnifexes, or ripped to shreds by the alien horde. Dontoriel, the hero of Kryptos, was the last to fall, his tattered wings disappearing into a writhing mass of alien limbs as he was mercilessly torn apart. The landing field was a chaotic tableau of destruction, strewn with the wreckage of dozens of vehicles from the hasty withdrawal. Amid the battered temporary buildings lay numerous suits of power armor, their vibrant colors stripped away by acid. The corpses had not yet been devoured by the Tyrannids, for the feeding frenzy had yet to reach this part of the field. Dante couldn't help but laugh, a wild and despairing sound. Even when united, the sons of Sanguiniess could do little more than delay the inevitable consumption of a single world. Moments of clarity in Dante's thoughts became increasingly rare as he unleashed the raging beast within his soul to confront the foe. His perceptions blurred, and hallucinations began to supplant reality. The first sign of his fraying mind came in the form of a golden flash overhead, which prompted him to shout with joy. "The Sanguinor!" he exclaimed. "He has come at last!" The Sanguiner, Sanguinius's herald, had appeared to aid the Blood Angels whenever they faced their direst challenges over the past 10 millennia. He would materialize from nowhere and vanish just as suddenly. Dante, in particular, had felt a sense of abandonment by the holy warrior. Unbeknownst to him, the Sanguinor's absence from Baal was due to his presence at the Cadian Gate. However, when Dante looked again, the herald of Sanguinius had vanished, and the tortured skies remained empty. Such deceptive visions occurred with increasing frequency, causing the battlefield to flicker and shift around him. Dante took a step forward, only to be thrust backward in time, fighting alongside Blood Angels, bearing unfamiliar markings in ancient power armor. In this distant past, the sky was shrouded in darkness, punctuated by intermittent flashes of energy weapons. He fought alongside his brothers, weeping for the Emperor's dream even as his fury burned brighter, an anger that consumed him and overwhelmed his very being. The battlefield then flickered back to the present. A burning space marine, engulfed in corrosive chemical fire, howled in madness as he wielded his broken sword against a Tyrannid monstrosity. All around, the angels of death fell in combat. Ordamael charged at a massive, multi-armed assault beast, delivering a stunning blow with his Crozius Arcanum before being torn asunder by the creature's colossal claws. Dante's mouth watered at the sight of the blood splattering around him. He would have torn off his helm to taste the sticky sand if not for the sudden notes of a trumpet that arrested him. A radiant light bathed a section of the battlefield where the Sanguiner hovered some 500 feet away, sword held aloft, finger pointing downward. Warriors clad in black battleplate emerged from the shimmering air, their armor adorned with skulls and bones. Flames erupted from their eyes and mouths, and their bolters unleashed peculiar blue-flamed ammunition. The Legion of the Damned had arrived to assist the sons of Sanguiniess in their dire hour of need. Dante blinked, but this vision remained steadfast. His warriors, galvanized by the otherworldly presence, shouted and howled, regaining a semblance of their humanity as they pressed forward, following the spectral revenants deeper into the surging tide of Tyrannids. The Tyrannids, overwhelmed by their otherworldly adversaries, began to retreat. The trumpet sounded once more, and the Sanguinor pointed with his blade at a specific spot on the battlefield. Following the herald's indication, Dante's helmet display began to pulse rapidly, flashing green. He blinked as he momentarily refocused on his mission, having momentarily forgotten it in the heat of battle. His vision wavered, and the Sanguinor transformed in his eyes, becoming a colossal flesh-and-blood angel, resplendent in blood-red robes. Sanguinious, Dante uttered in awe. He continued to press forward, pushing through the maelstrom of combatants, whether alien, revenant, or space marine. Before him, a Carnifex reared up, blocking his path. Dante prepared to engage the massive beast, gripping his sparking axe mortalis. However, a helmetless warrior surged past him, face twisted in savage fury, teeth bared, and engaged the creature in a seemingly futile battle. Captain Fenn, a part of Dante's mind registered. The angel Vermilion had kept his word. Dante ran past them, the last flickers of his intellect urging him to reach the Sanguinor, before he succumbed entirely to the maelstrom of battle. As he fought on, sometimes alone, the ghostly forms of the Legion of the Damned surrounded him. Their ceaseless, eerie fires decimated the aliens around Dante, drawing him closer to the Sanguinor's position. He passed the first of the Amario giants, the red-skinned behemoth lying in a peaceful, childlike pose amid the slain Tyrannids. The second and third giants followed, all lifeless, their immortal forms pierced by countless wounds. The Sanguinor remained in his position, pointing downwards. Warriors from across the battlefield converged on this point, not for strategic reasons, glory, or even survival, but out of sheer rage, a thirst for blood, and unwavering loyalty to their Primarch. Sanguinius reached out to his sons through his herald, compelling them to deliver one final, devastating blow in his name. They obeyed. A wall of toxic vapors obscured their target, filled with grotesque floating entities. Feeble limbs dangled beneath oversized spore chimneys that emitted yellow and green granular gases. Trillions of tiny spores filled the fog, each one smaller than a terrestrial mite and a part of the Tyrannid swarm. As Dante entered the haze, his armor issued a shrill warning. The minuscule sporlings attacked his battleplate, corroding the metal and breaching the seals beneath. Where his skin was exposed due to damaged armor, it blistered from the toxins and acids. Dante, however, felt none of it. The thick fog dampened all sound, and visibility was limited to mere yards. Dark shapes writhed within its depths, the outlines of chitin-covered Tyrannids and ceramite-clad space marines, occasionally illuminated by weapon discharges. The flame-wreathed warriors of the Legion of the Damned, seemingly untouched by the environment, distanced themselves from Dante, leaving him to face his fate alone. A blind tyrant guard emerged from the deceptive fog, Towering and hunched, it advanced with short, heavy claws. Dante instinctively engaged his jump pack, soaring over the creature's head to evade its attack, then descended with his axe mortalis gleaming. His strike caved in the creature's head, while a shot from the perdition pistol seared its internal organs, sending it crashing to the ground. A golden radiance guided Dante onward. The howls and screams of his fellow warriors sounded barely human, more akin to the hissing chitters and roars of the Tyrannids. Dante's flesh burned, his superhuman resilience unable to keep pace with the relentless damage inflicted by the minuscule creatures that gnawed at his body. Yet, the pain barely registered for him. What would have incapacitated a normal man, or even a space marine, was now a distant and meaningless throb. More blind giants emerged from the fog, moving with increasing purpose as the hive mind reacted to the emerging threat. Space Marines converged from all directions, their voices raised in savage cries for blood and death, crashing into the guardians of the swarm's leader. Dante dispatched another Tyrant Guard with a well-aimed shot, wounding it before swiftly moving on. As the wounded beast staggered in pursuit, 3 Blood Angels clad in blackened armor charged at it. One of them met a gruesome fate, torn in half by the creature's immense claws. An incandescent warrior, engulfed in flames and bearing pallid skin, approached the Tyrant Guard with a power fist. However, Dante did not witness the conclusion of the brutal battle, for he pressed deeper into the suffocating smoke, determined to locate the hive mind's leader. The reticle within his borrowed helmet flickered rapidly, signaling his proximity to the target. The cacophony of battle gradually faded into the distance. Ascending a mound formed by the entangled bodies of both Tyrannids and Imperials, Dante recognized the hive mind's strategy, consuming all biomass, be it warrior beasts or corpses, for future use. The smoke began to thin as Dante ascended. Puzzlingly, the Tyrannid bodies had disappeared beneath his feet, replaced by a macabre landscape strewn with countless corpses of various species, all drenched in bright crimson gore. Among the lifeless forms, Dante numbly recognized faces from his distant past, a chilling reminder of his extensive lifespan. Walking upon this gruesome collection of his victims, Dante questioned whether this was a psychic assault by the hive mind or a manifestation of his impending mental deterioration. Such concerns, however, were secondary to the one final body that had to be added to this nightmarish mound before he could rest. Summoning his willpower, he forced himself up the ethereal mound, using the stiff limbs of the deceased as handholds and rotten cavities as footholds. Hours passed during his relentless ascent. At times he was accompanied by spectral apparitions from his history. A smiling boy, a blood angel he had executed, a nearly forgotten teacher. Dante's eidetic space marine memory was gradually corrupting with time, and accessing the memories of his distant past was becoming an arduous task. His entire history seemed to converge to torment him during this journey. Eventually he reached the summit without any recollection of the means by which he had ascended. He found himself standing on a desolate plain, where the corpses had vanished, replaced by a pavement formed from tightly packed skulls adorned with sinister unholy runes. Before him loomed the site of his ultimate confrontation. Horus, the deceiver, cast a titanic shadow over the battlefield. The visage of his once beloved brother had been grotesquely transformed. Where a charismatic smile had once resided, now a cruel leer distorted his features. Confidence had given way to arrogance, and the wisdom that had once graced noble eyes had been supplanted by the malevolent power of ancient, malefic deities. Dante tightly shut his eyes, struggling to hold on to his identity. "I am not Sanguiniess," he muttered through clenched teeth. "I am Dante. I will die as Dante. This is my final oath, to remain myself." Horus quivered and grew more corporeal. The scene shifted, and the corrupted bulkhead of a spacecraft materialized behind him. Dante pressed forward with steps beyond his control, his armored boots reverberating on the deck plating. His destiny was to meet his demise here on the Vengeful Spirit, and for the sake of the Emperor, he would accept death at the hands of his own brother. His wings twitched with a longing for one last flight, but something wasn't right. It wasn't right. "I am not Sanguinious," he shouted with resolve. "I will die as Dante." He blinked, and Horus vanished. The eerie skulls disappeared, and the poisonous smoke was shredded by the gathering desert wind. Looking up at the sky, he noticed a light, a star. The crimson hue of the warp storm appeared to be dissipating. He stared skyward in dumbfounded wonder, contemplating whether the storm had abated, until a deafening roar jolted him back to reality. 50 yards away, the largest hive tyrant Dante had ever seen loomed. Balanced on backward-hinged legs, it stood taller than a dreadnought. Red spore clouds billowed from the chimneys on its towering back, and its fists bore 4 matched boneswords with brutally squared ends. He had heard tales of this abomination, the galaxy's scourge, the embodiment of the hive mind. Commander Dante confronted the Swarm Lord. His senses focused on the monstrous creature, and reality reclaimed its hold as his visions retreated before the overwhelming presence of the hive mind. The past yielded to the present, and the sounds of battle returned, though muted. The horde had been fragmented, and the frenzied cries of his bloodthirsty warriors echoed faintly, indicating that only a handful remained. In the creature's eyes glimmered an ancient and potent intellect, and despite his own age, Dante felt like a newborn in the presence of the intelligence that peered at him through those unblinking orbs. He sensed the duality within it, an entity that controlled the monster, yet was inextricably linked with it. An aura of immense psychic power emanated from it, its grasp extending across galaxies. Within that formidable intellect, sophistication and terrifying intelligence vied with an insatiable eternal hunger. During the fleeting moment when man and monster locked eyes, Dante couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for the creature. The insatiable hunger of the hive mind dwarfed the red thirst in its voracity. A low rumble emanated from the creature's throat. Muscular fibers, exposed by gaps in its chitinous armor, contracted, serving as a subtle prelude to its impending assault. There were no ostentatious displays of threat or intimidating roars. It simply hurled itself into battle, a testament to the hive mind's ruthless efficiency. Despite its colossal size, the Swarm Lord moved with astonishing agility. Its alien physiology made its attacks unpredictable, and Dante found himself deflecting a blur of jagged bone. The blades glistened with crystal veins, generating a shimmering energy field unlike any Dante had encountered before. When the Swarm Lord's weapons clashed with the Axe Mortalis, the collision produced a deafening boom that sent Dante reeling. He unleashed a brief burst from his jump pack to regain his footing, narrowly sidestepping a retaliatory strike from the creature's 2 left-hand swords. Activating his jump pack in full, he executed a swift backward leap just as the right-hand swords pounded into the desert floor, their energy fields exploding sand into the air. As the monstrous creature slammed down its weapons, Dante seized the moment to fire a rapid shot with his perdition pistol. His aim, honed by centuries of practice, was unerring. The searing melter beam sliced through the air, connecting with the Swarm Lord's lower left elbow joint. Steam erupted along with the scent of seared flesh, and the creature's arm hung limply. Remarkably devoid of pain, the creature severed the crippled limb without a trace of emotion, using one of its swords, and readied itself for further combat. Dante leapt once more, his jets at full throttle, swooping in for attacks and swift withdrawals. His fuel reserves dwindled, but he remained airborne, evading Bonesword strikes with meticulously timed bursts from his exhaust. His relentless blows left a dozen smoldering scars on the Swarm Lord's carapace. In response, the creature unleashed a psychic tempest of terror, but Dante, steeped in the depths of his thirst, remained impervious. His thirst swelled within him, teetering on the precipice of the Black Rage, a chasm from which he could never return. He resisted the temptation to finally succumb, knowing that such surrender would bestow formidable strength, but rob him of his sanity, ultimately leading to his demise. He would not relinquish his last vestiges of self-control until this abomination lay dead. It was a relentless thirst for vengeance that consumed him, a burning desire to sever the intruder's head from its shoulders and cast it onto the desert sands. The Swarm Lord's armor proved thickest on its shoulders, head and back. They engaged in a protracted duel, with Dante landing numerous blows that eventually dulled the edge of his renowned axe, its power unit venting black smoke. Despite Dante's skill, only a trickle of the creature's alien blood flowed. The Swarm Lord retaliated with unyielding strength, snapping and swinging its formidable blades with undiminished ferocity. Dante recognized the urgency of the situation. He needed to deliver a decisive blow soon. The Swarm Lord's resilience surpassed his own, and a single lucky strike from the creature's formidable weapons could prematurely end their battle, well before exhaustion took its toll. Dante dove in once more, his axe lowered akin to a cavalryman, stooping in the saddle to deliver a saber strike. Carefully navigating the swinging bone swords, he entered the spore cloud expelled by the Swarm Lord's chimneys, sweeping his blade across the leader beast's face, slicing through one of its eyes. Momentarily blinded by the swirling crimson microorganisms emanating from the creature's back, Dante was compelled to touch down. The two adversaries turned to face each other, the Swarm Lord's right eye now reduced to a gleaming bone, its cheek smeared with ichor and humours. With a cold smile, Dante taunted, "I shall take your other eye, and then I shall kill you." In response, the leader beast emitted a piercing shriek, unleashing a psychic assault that harnessed the harmonious voices of the hive mind into a concentrated mental onslaught. Dante reeled beneath the combined sonic-psionic barrage, feeling something within him give way. He tasted blood at the back of his throat, his mental faculties suffering more than his physical body. Staggering backward, dazed, his axe dragged through the sand. Seizing the moment, the Swarm Lord charged at Dante again, who propelled himself backward with his jump pack. As it closed in, the creature launched fresh psychic attacks, directing a lance of psionic energy that penetrated Dante's armor, striking his leg and sending him tumbling from the air. He crashed onto the ground with a jarring impact, his face colliding with his helm, breaking his nose. The energy field halo encircling Sanguinious' golden mask faltered and dissipated, while his iron halo's energy field failed abruptly with a resounding burst. The creature's shrill scream pierced the air once more, and Dante felt the numbness of his being radiating outward from his soul. His vision blurred, and the energy his thirst had granted him was sapped away. The Swarm Lord charged, poised to strike with 3 swords. Dante, regaining some semblance of composure just in time, activated his jump pack while still on his back. The jets propelled him across the ancient rockcrete and sand of the landing fields at high velocity, sparks flying from his armor as alarms blared from every system. A second thunderous impact shook him as he collided with the wreck of a land raider. His jump pack system's diagnostics blared with red danger warnings. Swiftly, Dante ejected his jump pack, rolling clear of the malfunctioning device as the Swarm Lord slammed into the tank wreck with such force that it momentarily lifted from the ground, before crashing back down. The Swarm Lord pivoted quickly, grinding Dante's discarded jump pack into a fiery pool of shattered metal beneath its massive hooves. Dante, now left with a suit of armor drained of its power, had only seconds of combat effectiveness remaining. Emergency battery indicators clamored for his attention, their bars rapidly descending into the red void of emptiness. Once more, the Swarm Lord unleashed its psychic onslaught, tormenting Dante's mind with nightmarish dread. Unyielding, Dante bellowed in response, unafraid. "I am of the Lord of the Blood," he proclaimed as he charged forward, the alarms of his failing armor ringing in his ears. "What I do for he who made me. No personal ambition is mine. No glory do I seek. No salvation for my soul or comfort for my body. No fear do I feel." The Swarm Lord swung its weapon at Dante with great force, but Dante countered with a retaliatory blow, shattering the bone saber. Thick alien fluids oozed from the broken blade, while the eye set into its hilt spun madly, its shrill cries filling the air. "By his blood was I saved from the selfishness of flesh. My life I give to the Emperor, to Sanguinious and to mankind," he intoned solemnly, the Swarm Lord's distorted visage reflected in the dulled surface of Dante's mask. Sanguinious's silent plea resonated within the hive mind. With a flick of his thumb, Dante disengaged the weapon's failsafes. "My service is done. I give thanks. My life is finished. I give thanks. Another will take up my burden in my stead. I give thanks." Unyielding, he discharged the perdition pistol at point-blank range into the Swarm Lord's face. The creature's flesh disintegrated and evaporated in a searing plume of superheated steam. Its first bone's word glanced off Dante's armor, leaving long, grievous gouges in its ornate surface, dislodging bloodstones from their mounts. Nonetheless, Dante's aim remained unwavering. The pistol's power pack grew scorching hot from thermal feedback, searing Dante's skin through the ceramite. Yet, he persisted. The fusion beam pierced the creature's organic armor, forcing thermic biogels to ooze from cavities within the chitinous exoskeleton. However, they proved futile against the relentless advance of the Perdition pistol's beam. The weapon radiated a blinding white heat. The Swarm Lord recoiled, its cries devolving into gurgles as its own tongue sizzled within its head. The pain from the bone shard jarring his organs caused Dante to momentarily lose consciousness as he crashed to the floor. Upon regaining consciousness, Dante found himself sprawled on the ground. Beside him, the Swarm Lord knelt, its movements feeble. Emitting a subdued, mournful keening, it slumped forward, its chest heaving. Its breathing spiracles wheezed, then fell silent. Dante shifted his head slightly, observing one of the boneswords lying nearby. The eye embedded within its hilt glared at him with malevolence. Before dimming, the pupil contracted. The sword itself was now lifeless. Dante drew a laborious breath, sensing fluid bubbling within his lungs. His body throbbed with pain from the Tyrannid's venom. He was dying. His rage, once consuming, bled away with his life force, leaving behind only agony and crystalline thoughts. Of course, Dante was saved. The forces of the Indomitus Crusade had arrived, finally, and perhaps luckily, to destroy the last of thee. As the dust settled on Baal, a planet scarred by the fury of High Fleet Leviathan, a lone figure stood amidst the devastation, a testament to resilience and hope. This was Commander Dante, chapter master of the Blood Angels, his armor battered, his spirit wearied but unbroken. The last devastation of Baal had ended, but at a cost so steep it seemed a Pyrrhic victory. The Blood Angels and their successor chapters, the noble sanguinary brotherhood, had fought with a valor and ferocity that would be sung of for millennia. Yet in the aftermath, Dante stood as the epitome of their sacrifice, a beacon of their undying spirit. The Tyrannids had been vanquished, but Baal and its moons lay ravaged, their skies darkened by the ashes of war. In this moment of quiet, after the storm, Commander Dante, the oldest living space marine, bore the weight of his years and the enormity of his responsibilities. His thoughts wandered through the corridors of time, recalling battles long past, brothers lost, and the ever-present shadow of Sanguiniess, the Blood Angel's fallen Primarch. But fate, it seemed, had yet another chapter in store for Dante. From the depths of the warp, a light emerged, piercing the darkness that enveloped Baal. The Indomitus Crusade, led by the resurrected Primarch Robuta Guilliman himself, had arrived. It was a moment that would forever alter the course of Dante's destiny. Guilliman, the avenging sun, stepped onto the ravaged soil of Baal, his presence a symbol of a new era for the Imperium. In Dante, Guilliman saw not only a peerless warrior, but a leader who had endured millennia, his soul tempered by the fires of innumerable battles. Their meeting was not merely between two commanders of the Adeptus Astartes, but a confluence of past and future, a moment that bridged the legacy of the Great Crusade with the dire needs of the current age. In the hallowed halls of the Fang, amidst the echoes of ancient glory and the somber remembrance of recent sacrifice, Dante and Guilliman spoke. Words of wisdom, of shared burdens and the fate of the Imperium were exchanged. It was here that Dante, who had stood on the brink of laying down his life, found new purpose. Guilliman, recognizing the strategic acumen and unyielding determination of the Blood Angels chapter master, bestowed upon Dante a new role, a duty that would see him not just as a defender of Baal, but as a guardian of the Imperium at large. Dante was to become the warden of Imperium Nihilus, a region plunged into darkness and despair, cut off from the light of terror by the Cicatrix Maledictum. In accepting this mantle, Dante took on a responsibility vast and daunting, yet he did so with the stoicism and resolve that had defined his long life. For Dante knew that in the darkest of times, hope was a weapon as potent as any blade. Thus, as the meeting concluded and Guilliman departed, Commander Dante gazed upon the horizon of Baal, his heart heavy with the losses endured, but buoyed by the unshakable belief in the resilience of the Imperium and its people. The last devastation of Baal was not an end, but a beginning, a herald of the trials and triumphs yet to come, and Commander Dante would face them all, as he always had, unflinching and resolute.